The year was 2347. Earth had learned to travel between the stars. Humans had built colonies on distant worlds and made contact with alien species. But in the eyes of the galaxy, humanity was still young, still small, still weak. The Galactic Assembly was a union of 200 alien species. They had ruled the stars for thousands of years. When humans first arrived, the Assembly looked at them the way adults look at children playing in the dirt. They allowed humanity to exist. They allowed humans to build small colonies on unimportant worlds, but they never saw humans as equals. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the battleship Dawn of Sol. He was 62 years old with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much war. He had lost his wife during the first contact wars, when humanity first learned that the galaxy was not friendly. Since then, he had dedicated his life to protecting Earth and her children. Today was supposed to be a peaceful day. His fleet was conducting training exercises near the outer colonies. Nothing special, nothing dangerous. Then the alerts started screaming. On 17 different human colony worlds, at exactly the same moment, ships appeared in the sky. They were ships. The Dominion was one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They had helped create the Galactic Assembly thousands of years ago. Their technology was advanced beyond anything humans could match. Park watched the reports come in with growing horror. They were not attacking military bases. They were not destroying cities. They were landing in neighborhoods, in schools, in playgrounds. They were taking children. On Colony 4, a beautiful green world with forests and oceans, was preparing dinner in her small home. She was 38 years old, a scientist who studied alien life. Her husband had died 2 years ago from a mining accident. Now she lived alone with her twin daughters, and they were 8 years old, with bright eyes and loud laughter that filled the house with joy. The girls were playing in the backyard when the sky turned dark. Looked up through the window and saw a massive ship blocking out the sun. It was black and silver, shaped like a curved blade. She had seen pictures of ships before, but nothing could prepare her for seeing one so close. It was bigger than the entire town. She ran outside screaming her daughters' names, and were standing in the grass, looking up at the ship with wide eyes. Blue light poured down from the vessel and could see figures descending. They were tall and thin, with pale gray skin and 4 arms. Their faces had no expression. Their black eyes showed no emotion. Grabbed her daughters and tried to run, but the blue light caught them. She felt her body freeze. She could not move. She could not speak. She could only watch. Walked toward them. It looked at for a moment, then looked at her daughters. It made a sound that might have been words, but she could not understand. Then it reached out with its 4 arms and pulled the girls from her frozen grip. Screamed, cried for her mother. Tried to scream, tried to fight, but her body would not obey. Tears ran down her face as she watched her children being carried into the light. The last thing she saw was looking back at her, reaching out her small hand, crying one word over and over. Then they were gone. Across 17 worlds, the same scene repeated. Parents frozen in place, children taken from their arms. They moved with cold efficiency, as if they had done this many times before. When they were finished, they left. As quickly as they had come, their ships rose into the sky and vanished. They left behind only silence and screaming. And one message. The message appeared on every screen on every human world. It was written in the common galactic language, translated into every human tongue. Your young will serve a greater purpose. Do not pursue. This is the natural order. Admiral Park read the message on his bridge. His hands were shaking, not with fear, with rage. Exactly 12,847 children had been taken. The youngest was 3 years old. The oldest was 11. They were sons and daughters, brothers and sisters. They were human children and they were gone. Earth demanded answers. The United Earth Council sent urgent messages to the Galactic Assembly. They demanded that the return the children immediately. They demanded justice. The Assembly's response came 3 days later. It was a refusal. The Dominion, the message explained, was a founding member of the Assembly. They had rights and privileges that younger species did not understand. The taking of young from lesser species was an ancient practice, protected by galactic law. Humanity should accept this loss and use it as an opportunity to grow stronger. In time, the message concluded, your species will mature. You will understand that some sacrifices are necessary for the greater order of the galaxy. Park read the message in silence. Around him, his officers waited. Some were crying. Some were shaking with anger. One young officer had to be held back from destroying his console. Then came the message from the United Earth Council. The politicians had made their decision. Stand down. Do not engage. Do not pursue. Further action will endanger relations with the Galactic Assembly. Park stared at the order for a long time. He thought about the 12,847 children. He thought about their parents, frozen and helpless, watching their bobbies being taken. He thought about a little girl named, reaching for her mother, crying, as she was carried into the light. He deleted the message. He turned to his communications officer. Get me officer, tell her we need to talk. Was the best intelligence officer in the fleet. She was 40 years old, sharp as a blade, and completely without mercy when she needed to be. She arrived on the dawn of Sol within 6 hours. Park met her in his private quarters. He showed her the council's order. He showed her the Assembly's response. Then he showed her something else. A file so secret that only 12 people in all of humanity knew it existed. It was called Protocol Ember. Read the file, her face did not change. When she finished, she looked at the Admiral. You want to do this, she said. It was not a question. I want our children back, Park replied. I want them to understand what they have done, and I want the galaxy to know that humanity will never, ever accept this. Nodded slowly. It will cost us, many will die. I know. The galaxy will hate us, they will fear us. Good. Was quiet for a moment, then she stood up and saluted. What are your orders, Admiral? Park looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, 12,847 children were waiting, scared, alone, wondering if anyone was coming for them. Contact every human ship, every colony, every factory and shipyard. Tell them to go dark, tell them to prepare. His voice was cold and hard as steel. We have work to do. On Colony 4 sat in her empty house. Her daughter's toys were still on the floor. Their beds were still unmade. Their laughter still echoed in her memory. She had cried until she had no more tears. Now she felt only emptiness, and something else, something that burned in her chest like a small, hot coal. When the message came, a coded transmission from Earth's military intelligence, she read it carefully. They wanted her help, her knowledge of alien biology, her expertise. They were going to bring the children home. She stood up slowly. She looked at her daughter's picture on the wall. She touched their faces with her fingertips. Wait for me, she whispered, is coming. 3 weeks passed after the abduction. The galaxy watched humanity and waited. They expected tears. They expected protests. They expected the young species to cry and complain and eventually accept their loss. What they saw was silence. Every human ship retreated from shared space lanes. Every human ambassador left their posts. Every communication channel went dark. It was as if humanity had simply disappeared. The Galactic Assembly was confused. Some members thought humans were grieving privately. Others thought they were afraid. The Dominion laughed at their meetings. They have accepted their place, the representative said, as all lesser species must. They were wrong. Deep in human space, on 100 different worlds, something was happening. Factories that made farming equipment were now making weapons. Shipyards that built cargo vessels were now building warships. Scientists who studied medicine were now creating new technologies for destruction. Admiral Park stood at the center of it all. He had moved his command to a secret station hidden in an asteroid field. From there, he coordinated the largest military buildup in human history. Brought him daily reports, production numbers, fleet readiness, intelligence updates. Everything was moving faster than anyone expected. When humans had a reason to work together, they could achieve miracles. But Park needed more than weapons. He needed information. That was where Captain Lee came in. Was 34 years old, young for a captain. He commanded a small reconnaissance ship called Horizon's Edge. It was fast, quiet, and equipped with the best stealth technology humanity could build. His mission was simple: go into space, learn everything he could, and come back alive. He left with a crew of 12. They all knew they might not return. The journey into territory took 2 weeks, and his crew moved carefully, avoiding patrols and hiding in the shadows of dead planets. What they found made them sick. They had not taken only human children. They had been doing this for thousands of years. Dozens of species had lost their young to the Dominion. Some species had been completely destroyed when they tried to fight back. Others had simply given up, accepting the natural order that they preached. But the worst discovery came when found one of the facilities. It was a massive station, hidden deep in a nebula. His ship's sensors detected strange energy patterns coming from inside, patterns that looked almost like brain activity. Sent a small probe to investigate. What it recorded would haunt him forever. The children were still alive, but they were no longer children. They had wired them into machines. Their bodies floated in tubes filled with blue liquid. Cables connected their heads to vast computer systems. Their eyes were closed, their faces peaceful, but their minds were screaming. They used them as biological processors. Living brains, stripped of identity, used to run their ships and stations. The children's thoughts, their dreams, their memories, all consumed by technology. Watched the recording 3 times. Then he went to his quarters and vomited. When he came out, his face was pale, but his eyes were hard. "Get us home," he told his pilot. "The Admiral needs to see this." On the secret station was working day and night. She had been recruited by military intelligence for her knowledge of alien biology. Her job was to analyze any data that came back from reconnaissance missions. Once recording arrived, she was the first to examine it. She studied the images of children in tubes. She analyzed the brain patterns. She calculated how long the children had been connected to the machines, and then she found something that made her heart stop. Among the thousands of brain signatures, she detected 2 that were different, 2 minds that were still fighting, still aware, still trying to reach out. She ran a comparison with the patterns in her files, patterns she had recorded years ago when her daughters were Bobbies during a routine medical scan. The match was perfect, and were still alive, still themselves, and somehow was sending out a signal. Listened to the signal for hours. It was faint, hidden beneath layers of encryption, but she could hear it. A small voice singing a Korean nursery rhyme, a song used to sing to her daughters every night before bed. She collapsed in her chair and cried, but these were not tears of despair. These were tears of hope. She immediately went to Admiral Park with her findings. "They're alive," she said, her voice shaking. "The human children were taken recently. They haven't had time to fully integrate them. If we move fast, we can save them." Park looked at the data. His face was calm, but his hands were tight fists. "How long?" he asked. Hesitated. "A few months, maybe less. After that, the process will be complete. They will be gone." The Admiral nodded slowly. He called for Officer and Captain Lee to join them. When everyone was assembled, he laid out the situation. The children were alive but running out of time. The fleet outnumbered humanity 40 to 1. A direct assault would be suicide. Was the first to speak. She had already done the calculations. If we attack their fleet directly, we will lose. Even if we threw every ship we have at them, we would be destroyed. Then we don't attack their fleet, Park said quietly. Everyone looked at him. We attack their worlds. He activated a holographic display. It showed a network of platforms hidden throughout human space. Each platform was connected to massive electromagnetic accelerators, and attached to each accelerator was an asteroid. The Prometheus Array, Park explained. We have been building it in secret for 50 years. It was designed as a last resort, a weapon to use if humanity ever faced extinction. Stared at the display. Those asteroids, you're going to accelerate them to near light speed. Correct. At that velocity they become unstoppable. No shield can block them. No weapon can destroy them. By the time anyone sees them coming, it is already too late. The room was silent. Everyone understood what this meant. This was not a weapon of war. This was a weapon of annihilation. Spoke up, her voice worried. But the children are on a station. If we destroy their worlds. We won't target population centers, Park assured her. We will target their military installations, their shipyards, their defenses. We will cripple their ability to fight. Then we will go in and rescue the children. Nodded slowly. It could work, but there's a problem. They will send their fleet to stop us the moment we reveal ourselves. We need a distraction, something to draw them away from there. Looked at his captain's insignia. He thought about his crew. He thought about the children in those tubes, their minds slowly being consumed. I'll do it, he said. Give me a fleet. Any ships you can spare. We'll engage the Armada directly. We'll keep them busy while the Prometheus Array fires. Park looked at the young captain. You understand what you're volunteering for. They will have 3,000 ships. You might have 200. This is not a battle you can win. Smiled, but there was no humor in it. I know, we're not trying to win, we're trying to buy time. He thought about his own childhood, his mother singing him songs, his father teaching him to fly, the feeling of being safe and loved. Every child deserved that feeling. How long do you need? He asked. 6 hours, answered. Keep them busy for 6 hours and we can save the children. Stood up and saluted. Then you'll have your 6 hours, Admiral, whatever it costs. Park returned the salute. His eyes were wet, but his voice was steady. Thank you, Captain. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten. As the meeting ended, pulled aside, she pressed something into his hand. It was a small data chip. This contains everything we know about the facility where the children are held, she said. If anything goes wrong with the main plan, if there's any chance at all. Understood. If the rescue failed, if the fleet was destroyed, if everything went wrong, this chip might be humanity's last hope of saving those children. He tucked it into his jacket. I'll keep it safe. Nodded. Bring them home, Captain. Bring all of them home. Across human space, ships began to move. Soldiers said goodbye to their families. Workers finished their last shifts at the weapons factories. Everyone knew what was coming. The galaxy had laughed at humanity, had called them weak, had taken their children and told them to accept it. Now the galaxy would learn the truth. Humans were not weak. They were just patient. And their patience had finally run out. 6 weeks had passed since the children were taken. The galaxy still believed humanity was hiding in shame. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Dawn of Sol, now repositioned at the edge of space. Around him, his officers worked in tense silence. Everyone knew what today meant. Sir, his communications officer reported, all human civilians have been evacuated from non-human space. The last transport just crossed into our territory. Park nodded. For weeks, human merchant ships had been quietly removing every human citizen from alien stations and colonies. They did it slowly, carefully, without attracting attention. Now, no human remained in the path of what was coming. "Send the message," the Admiral ordered. The transmission went out across all galactic channels. Every species in the galaxy would hear it. Every government, every station, every ship. Park's face appeared on screens throughout the stars. "This message is for the Galactic Assembly and the Dominion," he began. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "6 weeks ago, you took our children. You told us this was the natural order. You told us to accept our loss and move on. You were wrong." He paused, letting the words sink in. "There is nothing natural about what you did. You stole children from their parents. You turned them into components in your machines. You did this because you thought we were weak, because you thought we would not fight back." His eyes hardened. "To the Dominion, I now deliver this message. You have 14 standard cycles to return every human child unharmed. This is not a negotiation. This is not a threat. This is a countdown. At the end of 14 cycles, we will come for them ourselves, and we will burn everything that stands in our way." The message ended. Across the galaxy there was silence. Then came the laughter. The Dominion found the message hilarious. A young species, barely a few centuries old, threatening one of the oldest powers in the galaxy. It was absurd. It was amusing. It was exactly what they expected from primitives. The High Command mobilized their fleet. 3,000 warships, the largest armada they had assembled in 1,000 years. They would crush this rebellion quickly and completely. Then they would take more human children as punishment. The fleet moved toward human space. Sensors detected a small human force waiting at the threshold, a narrow passage between two dead star systems. Only 200 ships. Pathetic. Captain Lee stood on the bridge of Horizon's Edge, now leading a fleet of volunteers. Every ship in his force was crewed by people who had chosen to be there, people who knew they would probably not survive. His communications officer reported, "Captain, the Armada has arrived. 3,200 ships. They're hailing us." "Put it through." A face appeared on screen. It was the Armada commander, a decorated officer with medals covering his uniform. "Human vessels," they said, "you are outnumbered and outmatched. Surrender now and we will be merciful. Continue this foolishness and you will be destroyed." Smiled, "Thank you for the offer, but I'm afraid we must decline. You cannot win this battle." "I know," leaned forward, "but you see, we're not trying to win, we're trying to make you bleed." He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "All ships engage." The Battle of the Threshold began. 200 human ships charged at 3,000 warships. It was madness. It was suicide. It was exactly what Park needed. The human ships were not meant to win. They were meant to distract, to draw the Armada away from there, to keep them busy for 6 hours. Fleet fought like demons. Their ships were smaller and weaker, but they were fast and unpredictable. Human pilots performed maneuvers that alien computers said were impossible. They flew into the gaps between enemy vessels, forcing them to be careful of hitting their own ships. The first hour cost 30 ships. The second hour cost him 40 more. By the third hour, only half his fleet remained. But they kept fighting. "Captain," his tactical officer reported, "we've lost the brave soul. The pride of his taking heavy damage." Gripped his console. He knew every captain, every crew member. He had shared meals with them, laughed with them. Now he was watching them die. "Tell the pride to fall back. Redistribute the line." "Sir, they're refusing. Captain says he can hold for another 20 minutes. 20 minutes. 20 minutes of life, given freely so that children could be saved." "Tell him," his voice cracked, "tell him thank you." The Pride have exploded 10 minutes later, taking 3 cruisers with it. While the battle raged, something else was happening far away. In deep space, hidden behind shields and disguises, the Prometheus array activated. 12 platforms, each holding an asteroid the size of a small mountain. Engineers had spent years preparing this moment. Admiral Park gave the order from his ship. Fire! The platforms hummed with energy. Electromagnetic fields powerful enough to tear apart normal matter accelerated the asteroids. Faster and faster they moved, until they reached 70% of light speed. Then they were released. 12 projectiles, invisible to most sensors, streaked across space toward military installations. They would hit their targets in less than an hour. Nothing could stop them. Nothing could even see them coming. Back at the battle, they were growing confident. The human fleet was almost destroyed. Only 50 ships remained, including Horizon's Edge. Victory was certain. Then their sensors detected something strange. "Commander," an officer reported, "we're reading unusual gravitational distortions in home space. Multiple objects moving at extreme velocity." The commander frowned. "What objects?" "Unknown. They're too fast to track properly, but their trajectories suggest." The officer's 4 hands trembled as he worked his console. "Sir, they're heading for our military stations." Before the commander could respond, the reports started flooding in. Station Prime 7, the largest shipyard in the Dominion, had been destroyed. Something had hit it at unimaginable speed. The station simply ceased to exist, along with the 200 ships docked there. Then Station Prime 12. Then the orbital defense platforms around their colony worlds. Then the weapons manufacturing centers. In 17 minutes, the Dominion lost 40% of their military infrastructure. Not in battle, not in defeat, simply erased from existence by objects they never even saw. The commander stared at his screens in horror. His was under attack, and he had brought his entire fleet here to fight a distraction. All ships return to space immediately. But it was too late. The damage was done. Captain Lee watched the armada turn and flee. His ship was crippled, barely holding together. Of his 200 ships, only 23 remained. The rest were debris floating in the void. His tactical officer laughed weakly. "We did it, Captain. We held them for 6 hours." Nodded. He thought about his crew, his friends, all the people who had died to buy this time. He thought about the children in those tubes, waiting to be saved. "Signal the Admiral," he ordered. "Tell him the path is clear." On the dawn of Seoul, Admiral Park received the message. He closed his eyes for a moment, honoring the sacrifice of his fleet. Then he opened them and gave the order humanity had been waiting for. "All ships begin the assault. We're bringing our children home." The human fleet moved into space, not to conquer, not to destroy, to rescue. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. Humanity had done the impossible. They had crippled an ancient empire with weapons no one knew they possessed. They had sacrificed hundreds of ships and thousands of lives, all for their children. The Galactic Assembly was in chaos. Species that had ignored the abduction now issued frantic statements condemning humanity's response. They called it barbaric, excessive, terrifying. Admiral Park, response was broadcast to all of them. "Your condemnation is noted. It changes nothing. We gave you the chance to help us. You refused. We gave them the chance to return our children. They laughed. Now we will do what we must. Anyone who stands between us and our children will share this fate." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was ice. "This is what happens when you touch human children. Remember it." In the remains of the armada, the commander stared at his devastated fleet. 3,000 ships reduced to fleeing survivors. They're burning, their power broken. And the humans were just getting started. Somewhere in the void, aboard the battered Horizon's Edge, Captain Lee permitted himself a small smile. His ship was barely flying. His crew was exhausted. They had lost so much. But they had won. Now came the real battle, not against ships or stations, but a race against time to save 12,847 children before they were lost forever. Looked at the data Chip had given him, still safe in his jacket. "Hold on," he whispered to the children he had never met. "We're coming." The Galactic Assembly had never seen anything like it. An ancient power, one of the founding members of galactic civilization, brought to its knees in a matter of hours. Species that had watched in silence as the took human children now scrambled to respond. Some issued statements of concern, others quietly celebrated. Many simply watched in shock as humanity continued its advance into space. But Admiral Park did not care about their opinions. He cared about only one thing: the facility where the children were held. The human fleet moved through territory without mercy. Any ship that tried to stop them was destroyed. Any station that fired on them was eliminated. Though their military shattered could do nothing but watch. Sat in a transport ship among hundreds of Marines. She had refused to stay behind. Her daughters were in that facility, and she would be there when they were rescued. The Marine commander, a large man named Sergeant, had tried to convince her to remain on the Dawn of Sol. "It will be dangerous," he said. "We don't know what we'll find in there." Had looked at him with eyes that had not slept in weeks. "My daughters are in there. I'm coming." Had seen that look before, on the faces of soldiers ready to die for something they believed in. He stopped arguing. The facility was hidden in a nebula, just as Captain Scouts had reported. It was enormous, a twisted structure of metal and organic material that seemed to pulse like a living thing. Around it floated the remains of a defensive fleet, destroyed by human advance forces. "All teams prepare for boarding," the Marine commander ordered. "Remember your training. The children are the priority. Save them first, kill second." The transport ships approached the station, boarding tubes attached to the hull, airlocks opened. And humanity went to war. The inside of the station was a nightmare. They had designed it for efficiency, not comfort. Corridors twisted in ways that made no sense to human minds. The air smelled wrong, chemical and organic at the same time. Strange sounds echoed through the metal halls. Marine teams spread out through the facility, following the signals that had identified. Each team carried medical equipment and specialists trained to disconnect children from the machines. Moved with Sergeant's team. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. Somewhere in this horrible place, her daughters were waiting. The defenders fought back, but they were not prepared for this. Their weapons were designed for space combat, not close quarters fighting in corridors. The human Marines, armed with weapons designed specifically for this mission, cut through them. Kicked down a door and found the first chamber of children. Hundreds of tubes lined the walls, each containing a small body floating in blue liquid. Cables connected their heads to the machines. Their eyes were closed, their faces peaceful, but readings showed their minds were active, processing data for systems. "My God," one of the Marines whispered. Pushed forward, scanning the faces. These were not human children. They were from other species taken years ago. Their minds were already gone, consumed by the technology. "We can't save these ones," said, her voice breaking. "They've been connected too long. Their minds are empty." Nodded grimly. "Mark the location. We'll come back for the bodies." They moved on. The facility was vast, containing thousands of children from dozens of species. Most were too far gone to save. But as the teams went deeper, they found newer sections, more recent acquisitions. Then they found the human children. The chamber was smaller than the others with only 200 tubes, but the readings were different. These minds were still fighting, still aware, still human. Marines rushed to the tubes, beginning the careful process of disconnection. Medical teams moved in, preparing the children for transport. Walked along the rows, searching faces. Her hands were shaking. Her breath came in short gasps. Then she saw them. Two tubes side by side. Two girls with black hair and Korean features. Two faces she knew better than her own. And fell to her knees in front of the tubes. Tears streamed down her face. Her daughters were there, so close, separated from her by only a thin layer of glass. "Get them out," she whispered. "Please get them out." The medical team moved quickly. The disconnection process was delicate. Remove the cables too fast and the mind could be damaged. Remove them too slow and the children could be pulled back into the system. Watched every second. She watched as the tubes drained. She watched as the cables detached from her daughters' heads. She watched as their eyes began to flutter. The first one to wake was. She opened her eyes slowly, confused and scared. She looked around at the strange faces, the unfamiliar place. Then she saw her mother. Grabbed her daughter and held her tight. Arms, weak from weeks in the tube, wrapped around her mother's neck. "I knew you'd come," whispered. "I tried to call you, I sang the song." "I heard you," said, crying and laughing at the same time. "I heard you, baby. I heard every word." Woke moments later. When she saw her mother and sister, she reached out and was pulled into the embrace. Three people, one family, holding each other in the middle of a nightmare. Around them, similar scenes played out. Parents who had come on the rescue mission found their children. Soldiers lifted small bodies from tubes and carried them to safety. Some children were crying. Some were laughing. Some were too shocked to do either. But they were alive. They were free. Sergeant gave them a few minutes, then touched the shoulder gently. "We need to move. The station isn't stable. Our ships hit some of the support structures." Nodded and lifted her daughters, one in each arm. They were lighter than she remembered, thinner, but they were alive and that was all that mattered. The evacuation was chaotic but organized. Marine teams covered the corridors while medical teams rushed children to the transport ships. Anyone who could walk did. Anyone who couldn't was carried. Behind them, the facility groaned and shook. Without its support fleet, without power from the destroyed stations, the structure was dying. Good thought, let it die. As the last transports pulled away, Admiral Park received the report he had been waiting for. "Sir, we've recovered 12,614 children alive, all human." Park closed his eyes. 12,614, out of 12,847. 233 children could not be saved. They had been connected too long. Their minds had been consumed. When the medical teams tried to disconnect them, there was nothing left to save. The Admiral opened his eyes. There would be time to mourn later. Now there was one more thing to do. He opened a channel to Captain Lee, who had managed to limp his damaged ship into space. "Captain, your status?" "Still flying, sir, barely." His voice was tired but proud. "I see the transports leaving the facility. Did we get them?" "We got most of them. 12,614. Was silent for a moment, and the rest? "Gone. They had been connected too long." Another silence. Then, "What are your orders, Admiral?" Park looked at the tactical display. That was within range. Their defenses were destroyed. Their fleet was scattered. They were completely helpless. He could end them. One more Prometheus strike and the species would be extinct. He thought about it. He thought about the parents who would never see their children again. He thought about the 233 minds that had been consumed. He thought about the thousands of other children from other species, too far gone to save. Then he thought about what it would mean if humanity became the kind of species that committed genocide. "Target Prime's sacred moon," he ordered. "The one without any population. Fire one projectile." "Understood. Just the moon, not the planet." "Just the moon." Park's voice was hard. "Let them keep their lives, but let them lose their pride. Let them remember every time they look at the sky what happens when you touch human children." The Prometheus array fired one last shot. The sacred moon of Prime, a place their species had for 10,000 years, cracked apart. Fragments of rock and dust spread across the sky, forming a ring around the planet. From the surface, every could see what humanity had done. They could have killed everyone. They could have ended the Dominion forever. Instead, they had destroyed a symbol, a warning written in the heavens. We showed mercy, remember that. On the transport ship heading back to human space, sat with her daughters, and were wrapped in blankets, holding cups of warm soup that the Marines had prepared. They were still weak. They would need months of recovery. The doctors said they might have nightmares for years, but they were alive, they were safe, they were together. Looked up at her mother. What's going to happen now? Stroked her daughter's hair. We're going home, baby. We're going home, and no one is ever going to take you away again. Leaned against her mother's shoulder. Were you scared when you came to get us? Thought about it. She had been terrified. Every moment since the abduction had been filled with fear and anger and desperation. But she had also been certain that she would find her daughters, certain that humanity would not abandon its children, certain that love was stronger than fear. Yes, she admitted, I was very scared, but I came anyway. Nodded slowly. That's what brave means, right? Being scared but doing it anyway. Smiled and kissed her daughter's head. That's exactly what it means. Around them, other families were having similar moments. Parents reuniting with children, brothers finding sisters, friends embracing friends. The transport ship was full of tears and laughter and love. And somewhere in the void behind them, the Dominion watched their sacred moon crumble into dust and wondered how they had made such a terrible mistake. 1 year had passed since humanity burned the Dominion. The galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. The Dominion no longer existed. After their military was destroyed and their sacred moon was shattered, the other species they had oppressed for thousands of years rose up. Colony worlds declared independence. Client species demanded freedom. Within months, the mighty Dominion had broken into 12 warring states, fighting each other for the scraps of their former empire. They would never reunite. Everyone knew it, they were finished. But the galaxy's attention was not on the fallen empire. It was on the species that had brought them down. Humanity. The Galactic Assembly held emergency meetings for months. How should they respond? Should they punish humanity for using weapons of mass destruction? Should they praise them for ending a tyranny that had lasted? Should they fear them or respect them? In the end, they chose all three. New laws were passed. The harvesting of children from any species was banned forever. Any species that violated this law would face immediate action from the entire assembly. The law was called the Soul Accords, named after the human capital city. It was a small victory, but it mattered. Never again would a species like the be allowed to steal children while the galaxy watched. Admiral Park retired from military service. He was offered awards, medals, and positions of power. He refused them all. Instead, he moved to a small house on Earth, near the ocean. He spent his days reading, fishing, and watching the waves. Once a month, he traveled to orbit, to a monument that floated among the stars. The Ember Memorial. It was a ring of stone and metal circling Earth like a second moon. On its surface were carved 233 names, the children who could not be saved. Park visited each name, reading them aloud, remembering faces he had never seen but would never forget. He brought flowers from Earth and left them floating in the zero gravity, a garden of remembrance for the lost. He was there on the anniversary of the rescue, along with thousands of other visitors, families who had lost children, soldiers who had fought to save them, citizens who simply wanted to pay their respects. A reporter approached him. She was young, eager, full of questions. Admiral, do you regret anything? The destruction you caused, the lives lost on both sides. Park looked at the names on the memorial. Then he looked at the reporter. I regret that we did not move faster, he said quietly. I regret that 233 children died waiting for us. I regret that their parents will never see them grow up. He paused. But do I regret what we did to the? No. I would do it again, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, because that is what humanity does. We protect our children, whatever the cost. The reporter had no more questions after that. Returned to her work as a scientist, but her role had changed. She was now Earth's special representative for child welfare across the galaxy. Her job was to make sure that no species ever suffered what humanity had suffered. She traveled to distant worlds, meeting with governments and organizations. She helped establish sanctuaries for rescued children. She created programs to track missing young across the stars. She became known as the Mother of the Lost, a title she accepted with quiet pride. Her daughters and grew up under the galaxy's watchful eye. They had nightmares sometimes, memories of blue liquid and cables and darkness. But they also had their mother, who held them when they cried and sang to them when they could not sleep. When they turned 18, both daughters announced their intention to become diplomats. They wanted to represent humanity to the galaxy. They wanted to show other species that humans were not just destroyers but builders, not just warriors but healers. Their first assignment was to a space station at the edge of known space, where a new alien species had just been contacted. The species was nervous about meeting humans. They had heard the stories. They had seen the recordings of shattered moons and burning fleets, and met with their representatives calmly and kindly. They spoke of peace and cooperation. They offered friendship and trade. They showed no anger, no threat, no aggression. At the end of the meeting, one of the alien delegates asked a question. We have heard what your species did to they said. We are afraid of you, should we be? Smiled gently. It was the same smile her mother had. You should only be afraid of us if you threaten what we love, she said. We did not attack them because we are violent. We attacked them because they took our children, our families, the most precious thing we have. Continued. Humans will go to war for many reasons, but there is nothing we will not do for our children. Protect them, and you will have no better friend than humanity. Harm them, and you will have no worse enemy. The aliens considered this. They looked at the two young women, once victims, now ambassadors. They saw strength in their eyes, but also kindness, also hope. We understand, the alien leader said finally. We will remember. The first treaty between humanity and the new species was signed the next day. Captain Lee was promoted to admiral after the war. He spent his career building a new kind of fleet, one designed not just for war but for rescue. His ships patrolled the galaxy, responding to distress calls, saving those who could not save themselves. He never forgot the battle of the threshold. He never forgot the friends he lost. Every year on the anniversary, he gathered his crew and read the names of the fallen. Then they drank together and told stories until sunrise. He was visiting the Ember Memorial when he met Officer again. She was now the head of Earth's Intelligence Division, responsible for ensuring humanity was never surprised again. Admiral, she said, nodding in greeting. Director, he returned the nod, still watching the galaxy's secrets. Someone has to. She looked at the names on the memorial. I've been thinking about something, about why they took our children, why they thought they could get away with it. And they didn't understand us. They saw humans as primitives, newcomers, weak. She turned to face him. They never imagined we would fight back like we did. They never imagined we could hurt them. That was their mistake. Nodded slowly. And your job is to make sure no one makes that mistake again. My job is to make sure no one has the chance to make that mistake again. Eyes were cold and hard. I watch everything. I know everything. And the moment any species even thinks about harming our children, I will know. She walked away without another word. Watched her go, grateful that she was on humanity's side. 10 years after the rescue, A delegation from a powerful alien civilization visited Earth. They were not members of the Galactic Assembly, but observers who had watched humanity's actions with great interest. They met with human leaders in a grand hall in Seoul. Diplomats, generals, scientists, and civilians gathered to hear what the aliens had to say. The lead delegate was ancient and wise, a being who had seen empires rise and fall. "We have watched your species for a long time," they said. "We did not know what to make of you. You seemed so young, so fragile. Then you did what no one expected. You saved your children. You showed the galaxy what you truly are." The delegate paused, looking at the gathered humans. "There are many powerful species in the universe. Many are older than you. Many are stronger. But there is something about humanity that is different. You have a fire in you, a love for your young, your families, your homes. You will sacrifice everything for them." Another pause. "This makes you dangerous, but it also makes you beautiful." The delegate turned to leave, then stopped. "A word of advice. The galaxy is watching you now, some with fear, some with hope, some with both. Do not give them reason to fear you more than necessary, but never, ever let them forget what you are capable of." The delegation departed. Earth was left to consider their words. In the years that followed, humanity spread across the stars. They built new colonies, made new alliances, and grew stronger than anyone had imagined. But they never forgot the lesson of the. They never forgot what they were willing to do for their children. On the 20th anniversary of the rescue, an elderly stood at the Ember Memorial with her daughters, now grown women with children of their own. They looked at the names carved in stone, remembering those who were lost. Daughter, a little girl with bright eyes and her grandmother's smile, tugged on's hand. "Why did the bad aliens take the children?" Knelt down to look at her granddaughter. She thought about how to explain such darkness to such innocence. "Because they didn't understand something important," she said finally. "They didn't understand that humans never give up on their children. They didn't understand that we would cross the stars and burn worlds to bring them home." The little girl considered this. "Would you do that for me?" Smiled and hugged her granddaughter tight. "In a heartbeat, my love, in a heartbeat." Somewhere across the galaxy, in the ruins of what was once the Dominion, other species were telling stories. Stories about a young civilization that refused to accept injustice. Stories about a people who answered cruelty with fire and tears with fury. Stories about what happens when you touch human children. The stories spread from world to world, from species to species. They became legends. They became warnings. They became reminders. And every time a new civilization joined the galactic community, they were told the same thing. Do not mistake human kindness for weakness. Do not mistake their patience for surrender. Do not mistake their mercy for inability. And whatever you do, do not touch their children. Because humanity remembers. And humanity answers. With fire,